Hello there. Phra Suparo is a Buddhist monk living at the Wat Tamkrabok monastery in Thailand, and he's also known as Peter Radcliffe, who's one of my best friends and a musician that I've played with, toured with a lot. I miss him a lot, and I wanted to talk to him again. I spoke to him on the first series of the Super Connected Conversations I did for the podcast, and so we got together to have a chat about analog and digital and what it's like from the perspective of a practicing Buddhist. I hope you enjoy this Super Connected Conversation. Hello. How is it? And I should be absolutely.
Yes, you should. Noted. Duly noted. Okay, and relax.
Yeah.
Hello. How are you, man? Nice to see you.
I'm really good. Yeah, I'm really good. I feel lucky to be able to say I'm really good at the moment. Yeah.
Well, yeah, as we all are, if we can, indeed. Yeah.
How are you?
Pretty good. Hot. It's getting very to that sort of stupid hot time of year now. In that wonderful way it does, where it's just like turning on a switch and you just go, oh, hot season. Oh. Apart from that,
time is it? What time is it where you are?
It's 10:30 at night. It's a bit late for me, but hey, rock and roll.
Late. You know? I know. It's me leading you astray from your Buddhist precepts yet again.
Yeah, up at 10:30, drinking a cup of tea.
Well, look, I obviously come preloaded with some questions, and I've explained at the beginning to our listeners or viewers exactly, who you are, what you do, what our relationship is, and all that, I really want to talk about, I really want to listen to you talk about that wonderful surprise that many Westerners get when they come to Tamkrabok Monastery. And there's monks with mobile phones, and some of them with extraordinary computer gear that's doing all kinds of stuff, and of course there's a big explanation as to why. So in terms of technology being good for us or bad for us, what's your take on it there as a monk in the community?
Okay, good, bad, or just it is what it is, and it is what you make it. I mean, well, good. I can answer it in all of those ways. I mean, I remember being here 20 years ago when, nearly 20 years ago, when this kind of technology was quite new. And the sentiments you just expressed are like, well, a monk with a mobile phone. Very much in favor of it there, and very crucial as well to point out that it only looks strange if you presume that we're sort of cosplaying monks in the Middle Ages, and so we wouldn't have anything they didn't have. But of course, I mean, the point of being a monk is to not have things beyond what is needed. And so we are now in the 21st century, and you just go, well, look, what if there's a monk who's, someone needs to get hold of him? He's an administrator. Someone's going to meet him. What are we supposed to do? Send a pigeon, because it's more authentic. So as I said, it's not pretending to be monks. You have to keep adjusting, understanding what the essence of it is. And I know a lot of it looks a bit old fashioned, like we wear this stuff, so that doesn't go together, but there's a very good reason for wearing this stuff, and it's not to look.
Can I second guess you that it's because you're all fans of Jedi Knights and Star Wars?
I was about to give you the official explanation, though. In fact,
you've got one. You've got a Star Wars explanation.
No, I'll give you the official explanation, but then possibly at the end of the program, I'll show you my special little Yoda picture that I have. Yes, but the official explanation, well, you're quite correct, is that these are actually the simplest possible garments you can make. I'm wearing 3 things, but each of them, if it's unfolded, is a rectangle. It's the simplest shape. You work out interesting ways you can fold it so they stay on. And it's just to reduce your needs to nothing. It's like if a monk didn't have a robe with very basic sewing skills and a few bits of scrap cloth, he could have one pretty quickly. It's just to make sure that you're never dependent on a bunch of stuff. And so that does raise a difficult issue, because obviously the nature of technology, well, things generally, but particularly this 21st century breed of desirable things, they're engineered to persuade you that they are necessary. So that definitely does, you know, with a bit of time having passed since me just going, yeah, embrace all this stuff, why the hell not, to see what a lot of other people are seeing. But I mean, it's very stark in a monastic context. And I mean, definitely one thing that you really notice has changed is that if someone comes to practice, you know, and no, practicing is demanding, and it's not for everyone. And some people are doing it because they know something's wrong and they've got to work on themselves, but it's going to be difficult. They're not just going to slip into it. And there was a pretty good rule of thumb: if a monk wasn't doing too well, you noticed because you'd see him all the time. You know, he'd always be out and about, sort of finding spurious reasons to have conversations with people and have encounters. And if he was in his hut a lot of the time, in his room, basically you presumed he was meditating. Now, sometimes now that has completely reversed, that there are, you know, so many things you can do inside your room which are a waste of time or possibly even detrimental. So that's an interesting way that I really noticed it's flipped over here. And like before, if your practice wasn't going so well, after a while you'd either get down to it or you quit because of boredom.
And with mobile phones and with mobile phones and apps and you know, social networking and anything else that purports to be helping to enhance your life or make you more efficient in the things that we do, but actually there's an addictive quality. What's that like from a standpoint of being you know, a practicing Buddhist, that you're responsible, aren't you, for part running an addiction facility, and there's some, and you know, addiction with alcohol and addiction with drugs or cigarettes is one thing, and we know a fair bit about it because it's been part of all of our lives for such a long time. But addiction to social media or you know, or just contact is something different and more recent. Where's the point in the monastery where you and the other monks who are working and helping in such a beautiful way people that are suffering with addiction, where does that sort of become a part of, you know, when someone's trying to get off heroin or something like that, but they're constantly on their mobile phone as well, which I'm sure must have happened a few times. What's your view on that? Or what's your view and what's the monastery's view? Because I know it's two different things.
It's well, I'll give you my view and I'll tell you the monastery's policies.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, this is a big old topic, yeah. So it's huge.
Okay, well, we've got just under half an hour, but
I'll try and keep it very disciplined. Well, I mean, I'll tell you the easy bit first. I mean, the policy about communications is, and always has been since there was the possibility of personal communications, has always just been when you come in for detox. If we're talking about the experience of a detox patient as opposed to a monk, you surrender such things. You know, even, you know, when I was first here, 2002, not everybody had a mobile phone. A lot of people did, but not everyone did. And the policy then was just, it's like when you arrive, You know, do you want to make a call to let people know you've arrived? Like when you're halfway through your stay, do you want to make a call to say, hey, it's going okay? And then when you come out, you know, you get a call at the end to make the next arrangement. Now, I mean, I can tell you now that, you know, in less than 2 decades, people were presented with that as the deal now, there would be a full-scale mutiny, that it would be the dependence has increased so much. And I see to a certain extent that these things create their own need. That I mean, I remember noticing in the 90s, I had to be a reluctant early adopter of the brick-sized heavy mobile phone because people said, you're working freelance, you know, you got to have one. And I went, nah. And then I just realized I had too many times I got home to an answer phone with people saying, do you want to do this gig? And I called them back and there was no gig because the world moved. It's like they need to know now. Nobody books anybody a month in advance, you know, anymore. It's like, you've got to be, yeah. So I accept that, but also definitely you see the you see the addictive quality, and that they're not saying so much, look, I really have to make some arrangements and this is very important, or they might start out saying that, but really if you just sort of turned the sound down and saw what they were acting out, it's like, you are violating my rights, I need this, I will die if I cannot do the things and they believe it. And then I saw, you know, an echo in it. And I mean, look how, I mean, this is a big old issue, so let's not talk about the rights and wrongs. How social media recently started just cutting out certain politicians or people and just saying, like, bam, you're not on our platform anymore. You can't speak to people through us. And there's many issues there about how they were choosing who they were. Let's not get into that. But the reaction that I saw from people, that it really was, you know, this is shutting down freedom of speech. This is a violation of my rights. How do you decide he's got the right to speak? And you went, hang on, this is a private company, you know. Since when did this become such a burning issue as unable to get access to clean drinking water? But that seems to be the level on which people are seeing this. And I will just tell you that, you know, there is probably no greater single cause of dramas with people undergoing detox than their access to their mobile phone, which we still try to keep restricted. Yeah, it's that bad.
When I did my detox in the monastery, which was 18 years ago, 2003. I mean, I had a what we now refer to as a dumb phone then, but I remember then saying, you know, leave that with your passport and your keys and everything else before you go into the treatment center. And
you go with that?
I had a partner at the time, and I remember wanting to get in touch with her, but realized that I actually I enjoyed the surrender aspects of being in treatment. This side of oh, someone else is taking care of everything, you know, for 3.5 weeks or whatever. I love that, and actually, in some respects, I sort of reconnected to that part of myself during the lockdowns. But I won't go into all that. But I can't believe that. So it's a real, like, because I know what it's like there when patients argue with monks. I've seen it so many times.
I mean, I think it is, and I think they have like 3 times a week access to their phones. So, like, you can come over to the office and you can use it, and there'll be an allotted period, which is not ungenerous. It'll be like half an hour, you know, or at least, and always at the end they're going, yeah, and and I can see many reasons. I mean, one thing that occurred to me was, I mean, like I talked about, remembering these things coming in and me getting one, but I remember distinctly before that, the first person I knew, the first person in my circle who got one, and we were all young musicians, and he really was the guy who was fixing a lot of the gigs in town. You know, he was like very busy, generating loads of work for us. And it was like a massive thing. You could club someone to death with it, you know. And good God, we mocked him and teased him about it, about how important you are. Oh, you're such a big deal, aren't you? I can't be without my mobile. Oh, did you forget your mobile? And with him, it was vaguely justifiable. I saw that. Okay, he's generating. And later, when I saw how hard it was without it, but then I just realized this is an incredibly basic thing about them. They make you feel important. I mean, you know, it's like they make you feel like when we remember first seeing them, we go, "Who do you think you are? That it's so important if the world can't get hold of you for a little while." And
do you think it is then sorry to interrupt, but I'm just sort of tuning into what you're saying a bit, and because there's someone I want to ask you. I mean, in terms of your practice as a Buddhist and as a Buddhist monk, not just a Buddhist, there's elements of trying to. Would it be fair to say, sort of strip down the ego or place the ego in a healthier place, and that's completely the opposite to what having a device that does everything for you.
A colossal challenge, and I've heard very experienced, very heavyweight monks even saying, "My phone is such a challenge." And I mean, in personal way, I've struggled against this one a lot, and I definitely saw that. And this is my second time being a monk, so when I came back to do it this time, I very deliberately did the first 6 months with a Nokia brick phone that was not switched on a lot of the time. But you know, I still needed to use email and stuff, but I would do that in a certain allotted time on a big machine. Gave into it in the end, and I'm now in a position, I'm in an interesting position. I spent nearly all of last year pretty well in retreat, as they say. Well, not all of last year, but from about when COVID hit, and they all said, okay, everyone socially isolate. And there's the weird thing that, like, you know, a monk goes, oh, cool. Just more doing what I do. And I sort of stayed in that really until the end of this year. And then I've had this strange thing, as you're aware of kind of emerging from that in, I won't say in style, but, you know, in a big way, because like suddenly I'm writing, I'm doing this website, I'm in communication with a lot of people, largely to bridge the gap that people can't come here and see us. You know, and like suddenly I'm just massively plugged in. And I was very cherry about it.
How does that feel to you? Because obviously, let's actually let me just ask you, how often approximately do you meditate a day?
Oh, Christ. Well, I mean, sorry, shout out to the other team. Christ. Not as much as I'd like to at the moment. As I said, since January, it's been very, very full on with
so before the tech injection that you've had.
I mean, I try to not fall below an hour a day right now, but before the tech injection, I mean, there was a baseline of 6 hours per day.
Wow. Okay.
And I mean, and now I'm very much looking forward to the Tudong, as you know, when we go out next month. We go out and hang in the jungle for a bit, so I'll get a little bit of back to basics there.
It's funny you say. It's funny you say, just for listeners or viewers, you say you go to hang out in the jungle. You're only actually really sort of 15 minutes away from the jungle now, aren't you?
Oh yeah. No, not even that, because I am, being a dyed-in-the-wool misanthrope, I have got the last house in Tamkrabok. I am. So yeah. So basically the jungle starts just about 30 foot away that way behind me.
I miss it, man. I can't.
Well, you come and see us again sometime.
I will when things
are
less complicated. In the world, not for me. I'd be there tomorrow if I could. Yeah.
But I will just say, sorry, we probably need to move on. Let me try and wrap this one up. I mean, one thing that's interesting that's from this perspective of having been very out for a long time and then very in and looking forward to getting out again, it's quite an interesting perspective, as opposed to always being somewhere in between those two things and somehow trying to balance it. going, is this too much, or am I being productive? And I sort of decided I had to embrace it after a week of going, okay, I'm doing a bit of this online stuff, but I must really try to not have it take up too much time. And then I went, no, let's accept that you've got to do this, and you've got to somehow do it in a way that is not pathological. And then I saw this very interesting thing. I saw this, I'm aware of the stuff people have been talking about these skewed, twisted visions of the world that you'll get via the various algorithms based on what you click. And so I sort of went, okay, do you know what? Why don't I just, instead of railing against that or being in denial about it, going, look, I did my own research and everything points to this. And he said, yeah, that's because everything on your stuff points to this and everyone on someone else's points to something else. You know, I tried to go, okay, I'm actually going to use this as a training aid. I'm going to say it does what it does. Like, stop complaining about it. And it shows me the worst side of myself, you know. I mean, you know, these three poisons that we talk about in
Now
Buddhism.
that's really
Craving,
interesting.
hatred, and delusion.
That's really interesting that it shows you the worst side of yourself, which is actually a really good thing, isn't it?
Well, and it fits so into basic Buddhist structure. I mean, one of the pieces I wrote a couple of weeks ago trying to explain this craving, hatred, and delusion, I used an analogy of a modern analogy. I said, you know, some things, you know, you become aware of them and you want to pull them towards you. They draw you. Some things you want to push them away. And some things you can't really decide. It's neither push nor pull, but you're not leaving it alone. You're still hanging on to it. So push, pull, or neither. That's the traditional way to explain when you're detecting these things in meditation. Is it pulling, pushing, or neither, but still involved? And I just went, well, the modern version of that is swipe left, swipe right, or down the rabbit hole. You know, it's like, I do like these things. I do like these things. I don't like those things. Go away. And then the things where you just go, and why am I still staring at this? I'm not interested in this, but like, oh, I clicked another thing. And so craving, hatred, and delusion. Your phone
I love
literally
that.
shows you that.
I love that you've broken down Buddhism into the three main activities of anybody on any app.
Well, and of course they've got to grab your attention in a short time, so they go for the lowest common denominator. And like, so yes, things I'm likely to just click on, do a lot of clicks on. It's the same kind of thing I always like. And look at the things that grab your attention. And the algorithms have no morality; they just see what works, right? And if I'm just scanning a bunch of stuff, it's like,
And sorry, that's such a great T-shirt. Algorithms have no morality.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they're immoral. They just do what they do. And then the hatred thing. It's like things catch my eye when I realize there's a few people I know who have just, especially in the last year, of you know, feeling the strain, I suppose, have become sort of really obnoxious ranters, or especially putting out, you know, nasty views and like things that conspicuously make you go, what? Really? You know, those get your attention. And of course, none of it positively reinforces any of the amazingly wholesome ways we can use putting our attention on anything, including the information coming from the internet, which might be a less dramatic kind of interest, like going, oh, well, you know, that's not generally my kind of thing, but hang on, let's take a closer look for a little bit longer. Let's try a little bit of investment. And go, that's really interesting. I didn't know anything about that. It sounds just
like,
reinforcing me, you know?
Yeah, it sounds like you're treating it as some of the other things that you do as a Buddhist, and what I've seen monks do there, which is the challenges are the treasures in some way. The things that are kind of not helping us and causing any kind of suffering are actually quite helpful to retrain the way that you interact with everything in life.
Oh, absolutely. And if we start getting into the idea of karma, I mean, the algorithms and the way they're connected, they're getting so weird. I mean, everyone's noticing them, like going, I didn't click on anything like that. I may have said something like that to somebody, or I nearly clicked on that, and I remember that I didn't. So why are you showing it to me again tomorrow? How do you know what's in my head? They're getting so sophisticated and even they work fast because AIs work faster than a human brain. It's like they're getting into really esoteric areas. And this, like, don't bother trying to figure out why you're getting this back. It's karma, man. And so it's like, it's algorithm karma. And so you look at this stuff and why am I getting it? And the one thing you can figure out is, well, I made this happen somehow. I'm doing something, whether it's an action, a big action I can remember sometimes, or a strange interaction of a lot of little things over time that's made this happen. And so it is.
You've made me see this whole issue in a totally different and much more optimistic way, because it sounds like to me that the many years that you and I, of nearly 20 years, talking about the Buddhist trip, let's call it.
Trip.
It's called the Buddhist trip. That it's the journey. Is actually we're able potentially to make the trip a bit faster because of the terrible speedy AI that we're now being dominated by.
Maybe I think we can. So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to use it as.
Sorry, what I'm saying is communication. Is social networking actually a fast track to nirvana?
Yes, I mean, utilize it. It's resistance is useless. So try and use it for what it's good at. And what it is good at is showing you how awful you are and in what precise ways. It's like, what are the things that you just mindlessly lust after? What are the kind of things that you hate? And what are the things that kind of just make you tune out to a weird place, you know?
So for us, I think, because we're lucky that we've been aware of there being a trip at all, to try to I don't know, to control our own behavior, understand why we do the things we do. There's obviously a huge number of human beings who haven't been lucky enough to fall down a hole and realize that there's elements of their behavior in their life that they can change. So what you're saying, for you, I think, it's great. It's another amazing tool. But what do you think about if we look at, just individuals who really are victims of algorithms that are basically just there to keep the companies and corporations making money?
Well, it's doing horrendous damage, and you can definitely see it's doing horrendous damage. But then, I mean, there are some things where you just go, well, look, even if it's a challenge, we have to learn to somehow deal with it maturely. I mean, people can do appalling things to themselves with hamburgers. Yeah, it's like really, really appalling things.
It's such a funny thing.
And, you don't respond to that by only making celery available. It's like, it's the thing we got to deal with, man. And I just think, well, I mean, in some ways, it's not actually that different from, and I'm taking a Buddhist perspective on it, from what we already knew with the challenge of like getting a healthy view of the world and a view of the way that actually you form your view of the world by how you interpret signals coming into you. It's really no different. I mean, like, people have this illusion that, like, you think you live in your head and it looks like you look out through these windows of the eyes, but that's complete rubbish. Your consciousness is locked in the dark. It can't see or feel anything. It's like these little electrical buzzes, if you sort of wired into someone else's eyes, it's just sending little bits of information. It's the brain that makes a picture. It's the brain that picks up little snatches of this dots, and it joins a huge amount of dots saying, oh, I know what this is. I know what this is. It's one of them. And even without using any technology, how you literally will swear in court that you saw it, you heard it, and that's what it was. I mean, it's terrifying when you look at people actually doing a proper study of perception, and even asking people, What happened? I don't want your interpretation. What did you see? And like, the police know this. You've got to take witness statements as quickly as you possibly can after something happened. And even then, when it's just right after something happened, the range of answers you will get is terrifying, terrifying. That can make you go, man, are we living in the same world? And so,
And
to some extent,
that's a
the
great
internet
suggestion.
amplifies that.
That's a great suggestion that it's not, you know, you this is coming from something you said when in one of our conversations this year. We were talking about Facebook, which I'd love you to retell actually in a minute, but just the idea that there's only one answer, you know, there's one way that that this story has to be told, and of course it's not the case, is it? The only truth is that there are many truths, depending on which angle you were looking at the story from.
Yes, I mean, many truths, and some people will go, yeah, that's a compromise that we do for so we can all get on. But no, really, there are, and it's come so much to a head in the outside world, what I hear of it lately. I mean, we must learn to disagree in a civilized way, and disagreement can be practical. You know, it's like two people who know how to have a good argument is a wonderful thing. And it's not an aggressive action. It's like, let me test every part of my view of something. You know, like I shouldn't just be speaking to people who already agree with me, who let me go, yeah. You know, it's like we must learn to disagree in a civilized way. And again, you know, not a compromise in the name of peace, although let's not downplay how good a thing that is. But really, because there aren't ultimate truths. I mean, look at this business of you know, free speech, for instance. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? And I've got a fascinating perception of it being here in Thailand, where there really is a move towards like proper authoritarian repression, which can make me a little bit intolerant of things I hear from the West, where people are going, and I'm just going, no, that's not oppression. That is, no, that's not, you know, I mean, I could show you, I could introduce you to some people who can tell you what it is. And which is not downplaying these things. You've got to spot a trajectory. But here, you know, definitely free speech is something we need to be shouting about. It's like, because it's beyond, you know, it really needs to be shouted about. There needs to be a hell of a lot more of it, and we can apply it in a very random and reckless way. And it's got so far to go that it'll still basically be doing some good. And of course, you know, in the West, you can see that if someone just gets that in their head and thinks that no one has the right to even flag it up when I'm clearly being pointlessly obnoxious and stirring things up for no reason, then I say, well, no, I'm not against free speech, but maybe that's something you can calm down on a bit.
And
You know,
what's your view about free speech in terms of, you know, your Twitter and your Facebooks and all of those platforms where there's so much being expressed by different groups, and particularly what we might refer to as marginalized groups, or groups that have been marginalized for many years. Free speech is, you know, throwing up all kinds of questions.
well, it is. Well, I'll just say,
In the digital space, I mean, yeah.
And I hope this doesn't sound too oblique, but I mean, you mentioned, you know, two or more than two truths, two opposing truths, and we should always, you know, never try to reduce things too much. And I think that really a sign of intellectual, ethical, moral, spiritual maturity, all kinds of things, is being able to hold two contradictory things in your head at the same time, right? It's very, very important. And I don't see a problem with saying, if someone says, well, how should a person be? And I can give one answer. I say, so is that what you wish to impose upon everybody else? I say, no. I try to be rigorously police my own speech, my own, right? And I try to suck up whatever comes to me from anybody else. Now, often people will completely reverse that. You know, all kinds of things, all kinds of ideas, like you should have one set of standards for yourself and another for everyone else. You know, and you should be super hard on yourself. No, you should be. This is what I'm applying to myself, trying to be super hard. I mean, even the idea of virtue, right and wrong. We were having discussions some time ago on the question of why has the idea of virtue, being a good person, good become uncool. And yes, people often see virtue, ethical standards, as something to impose on other people. You know, now definitely it's the classic old rights responsibilities thing, isn't it? You know, yeah, if someone is going to let me stand up in public and be heard saying anything I want, well, that is wonderful. That is an amazing gesture of trust from them. And of course, I should try not to abuse that. And of course, I should try not to incite anybody who might be able to make a case for let's shut down people's right to speak and be heard. It's like, and so, yes, while I accept that the right to speak freely and express yourself includes the right to be a dick, that's not the point of it. You know, that really isn't the point. And I am getting the impression with some things I pick up from the West now that a lot of people think that is the point. I've got a right to be a dick, and you don't have a right to object. You know.
And we'll have to wrap up in a few minutes, but
Okay.
thank you so much for just just doing what you do and expressing your ideas. I mean, I'm still remembering that back in 2003 or 2003, just when every time you spoke, I either became a lyric in a song or then sort of progressed to me saying, actually, can I just record you saying some stuff?
No, we do a bit of PRS there, mate. Bit of PRS,
Yeah.
is it?
If I'd have had some, you would have. But
it's all yours now.
yeah, if it's still that last line on my first album that you spoke on at the very end, and you just said it's all just craving and hatred, mate. Ask a monk. And
I haven't come on much since then, have I? Same old.
Well,
banging on about craving and hatred.
But it's true, isn't it?
Yeah. And the more you see that, the more things unlock, and you can see it on subtler and subtler levels. These are very harsh, dramatic sounding words, but they can go to the subtlest things, and even things that we think are good and wholesome. It's like, do you detect that too much clinging to it, even if it's something that, you know, it is good to aspire to that, or it's okay to object to that, you know, but is that taint coming in? And I mean, yes, Buddhism has got so much complex stuff, so many lists and principles and things that are so much more complicated than that list. But yeah, no, 20 years later, I stand by that statement that you quoted there. It's all just craving and hatred.
Well, thank you so much for joining and staying up late. So I know that you'll be up early with the rest of the Sangha.
That was exciting.
Yeah, Phra Peter Suparo. Thank you so much. Thank you, man.
Well, thank you. Lovely to talk. My pleasure.